Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Ishan Kadaru, aka Push for Life, and welcome to this mini tutorial series on getting into modular synthesis using your Ableton Push 2. In this tutorial series, I'm going to be using Ableton Live 10, Ableton Push 2, and Reaktor Blocks as my VST modular synthesis plugin. Now you can use pretty much any modular synthesis VST. Just Google that and you'll find a whole bunch of different companies that have similar offers as Reaktor Blocks. I've chosen Reaktor Blocks mainly because I use Native Instruments Complete. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to let you know I got into modular synthesis about 9 months ago. And ever since I got deeper into the topic, it's opened up my eyes to all of the possibilities I have with Ableton Live 10 and also my Ableton Push, giving me a whole new skill set and helping me take my music production to a whole different level. So I'm very excited to share this knowledge with you that I've gained over the past 9 months, and I hope that it will help you take your Ableton Push 2 game to the next level. So let's dive right in. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to drag an instance of Reaktor 6 onto our MIDI track right here. And as you see, it opens up an empty Reaktor window. So we need to load our Reaktor blocks in there. First of all, what we need to do is click on Edit, Library. And from there, what we're going to do is we're going to start dragging in modules. Now we're going to start off very simply. All of these here, as you can see in this folder, Reaktor Blocks, are all different modules. So here we've got bento box modules, boutique, digilog, and so forth, all the way down to the West Coast modules. Now, the West Coast modules are my favorite modules so far, at least. They're based on West Coast synthesis. If you aren't familiar with that term, what I would recommend you do is check out a movie called I Dream of Wires. It's a documentary on modular synthesis, and if you watch that, you will completely understand what West Coast synthesis is. It's basically synthesis based on synthesizers built by Don Buchla and also Surge and so on. So in here, in this West Coast folder, we have 4 different modules. What we're going to do is we're going to drag on the oscillator module, like so. And here we have it. Now, this is an extremely complex module that gives us all kinds of crazy sound design possibilities. We're only going to be looking at a few of the different knobs that you can see on here today. But if you want to delve further into it, just leave me a comment in the comment section below and let me know what you want to know. And I will probably do some more tutorials based on the feedback you give me. All right, so let's get going. What we'll do here is we'll delete this. This is the input if we wanted to work with sound, which we're not going to be doing. So I'm going to delete that for now. This is our output back into Ableton. So what we want to do is, let me just split the screen right here and we'll see the panel. That way you can see what I'm doing a lot better. Now there are a whole bunch of knobs on here, as you can see. The DWG West Coast oscillator basically combines 2 oscillators, and it has additional wave shaping over here, which we won't be looking at in this tutorial. And there are all kinds of crazy internal modulation capabilities. But like I said, we're going to keep it simple for today, and we're going to be looking mainly at the 2 oscillators. So here we have the carrier oscillator and in red and the modulation oscillator in blue. Now it's nicely color coded, which keeps things nice and simple, thank God, because it could get very complicated very quickly. And what's going to happen is we're going to be taking the carrier oscillator, which is the oscillator that we're going to hear, and we're going to be modulating it in all kinds of crazy ways. What we'll do first is we will connect the out of the carrier oscillator right here to the output of Reaktor Blocks, which will then feed right back here into our track 1. and we will be able to hear the sound, because right now we can't hear it because it's not connected. So what we're doing now, we're going to use virtual wires and connect that output of the oscillator to the output of Reaktor Blocks. And now we can hear the left channel. And let's do the same. Oops. Let's do the same from here. And now we can hear the right channel. So if I turn this knob with my mouse, you can hear the oscillator frequency go up. And if I turn in the other direction, the oscillator frequency is going to go down. Now, playing this type of instrument or module with a mouse is not very fulfilling. So what we're going to do is, let me just drag this over here so we can see everything. First of all, we're going to group this reactor instance. Now you might be wondering why we are going to group this, because there's nothing else within this track which would be worth grouping together. But what grouping does is it allows us to use macros, and macros are there to control all kinds of, knobs and dials within the track. Now, in order to use the macros, what we have to do is we have to click on this arrow right here. Just move this over here and click on configure. And from there, what we will do is we're going to click on all of the dials that we're going to be using in this tutorial. So first of all, we want to click on this one, the modulator frequency. And as you'll see now, that dial is represented here in green. Now we're going to use this one, which is frequency modulation, the carrier frequency. And down here, we're going to be using, clicking on the wave shaping of the modulator and the wave shaping of the carrier. They're the only 5 dials we're going to be using in this tutorial. And you'll see we will be getting a massive amount of really creative sound design just using these 5 dials. So from here, I click on configure again. And now what we have to do in order to map them to the macros, we need to right click on the arrow and go to map to 1. And you can't see the macro map to 2, but I think you get the point. So let me just map these real quickly. And here we go, map to macro 5. And this conveniently labels the macros. So here we have the frequency of modulation. This is the frequency modulation, frequency of the carrier, wave shaping of the modulator, and the wave shaping of the carrier oscillator. All right, so let me drag this back in here. So as you can see, this knob right here, the third one, is the carrier oscillator frequency. So now I can turn this up, and as you can see on the screen, I'm now controlling that knob with this knob. Now, in order that I can better describe what's going on with all of these knobs, let me just open up an instance of Isotope Insight. So I'm going to drag Isotope Insight onto the track. And now we have a spectrogram which will show you what is actually going on. So let me go back over here onto my macros. Now I'm going to turn up the frequency of this red dial right here. I don't have that much screen real estate, so I'm going to have to move this out of the way, but it's basically this knob right here. Now when I go up, as you can see here, I'm controlling the frequency of the main carrier oscillator, which, it's not that exciting, but it's a good starting point. So from here, let me just turn this up to a nice frequency right here. Now, next we're going to be looking at the frequency modulation and the modulator oscillator right here, which are macro number 1 and macro number 2. So let's see what is happening when we turn these knobs. Let me see if I put this here, you can see what's going on. So first of all, we're going to up the frequency modulation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the shift button right here, because that will let me move the dial at a lot less speed, so to speak. Because if I turn this dial right now, it's just going to whack up the frequency modulation super high. But I want to do it very, very slowly. So I'm pushing the shift button right now. And now I'm turning the frequency modulation. And now you can see what's actually going on. Let me just turn it. So what the frequency modulation is doing is it's oscillating the carrier oscillator. It's modulating it from this oscillator right here, which you can see very nicely on the spectrogram. I'm not doing anything right now. What's happening is the blue oscillator right here is modulating the red oscillator, which is the oscillator that we are hearing. It's just going up and down, up and down. Now, if I continue to turn the frequency modulation, which is this button right here, up, you will see that the frequency of the carrier is going to go up. So let me just radically shift that up. Let me go even further. So now you can see these arches are getting a lot higher because the frequency is going up a lot higher. So what we can do now is we can increase the frequency of this oscillator, which will have the following effect. So I'm going to turn this one up now, which is on my macro number 1. And what happens now is the speed of these modulations is increasing. And as you can hear right now, the further we increase it, the crazier the sounds are getting. And you can see beautiful patterns happening in this spectrogram right here. Let's go back down. And we could even go further up with the frequency modulation, going even higher. So now you can see the jumps are getting really, really high. Let's increase that again. Okay, so let's bring this right back down again. There we go. So now we're right back to a normal oscillation with the carrier oscillator right here. All right, so now let's make things, let me just click this, a little more interesting. I can put this over here. I think that works better. Now you can see everything properly. So what we're going to do now is, basically we've looked at these three knobs, the carrier oscillator in red, the modulation oscillator in blue, and the frequency modulation of the carrier oscillator. That's it. We've only been dialing these three knobs so far. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the wave shaping. This is the wave shape of the carrier oscillator. So right now we have a sine wave right here. Then we have a triangle wave, a saw wave, and a pulse wave. And this transitions very smoothly between all of those four different types of waves. And right now we have that mapped on macro number 5. So that's this dial right here. So what you'll see in the spectrogram is what happens now to our oscillation, our carrier oscillator, when we increase, or I should say, when we switch from sine wave to triangle wave. Let me do that right now. So I'm upping this macro right now. And you can see all kinds of overtones. That's what's happening right here. All of these different lines that you see appearing now are overtones that weren't there before, which give us all kinds of nice different sound possibilities to work with. And just a little side note, the more orange the color, the more intense the volume of that particular frequency band. So you can see the main oscillation right here is very loud, and the different overtones decrease in volume all the way up here. Now we're going to go to the saw wave, so let's increase that, and you can see it's getting even louder. And from there we're going to go to the pulse wave. Bring that right back down to the sine wave, and away go the overtones right there. So that's what's happening with the oscillator. Now you can hear that changed the timbre of the sound quite significantly. But when we do the same thing over here on the modulator, the modulation oscillator, we get some very, very interesting artifacts. So what we're going to do now is we're going to increase the frequency modulation, which is this middle blue one right here, to have it going up and down again. So let's just increase it to about this middle amount right here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we just did with the carrier oscillator, with the wave shaping over here. We're going to do that to the modulation frequencies. Sorry, the modulation oscillator. So right now we've got a sine wave over here, and you can see that very nicely here. This curve is the sine wave. Now we're going to move that to a triangle wave. And as you can see now, what was round arches are now angular arches, like a triangle. And from there, we're going to go to a saw wave. And you can see that is a significant difference. I'll up the frequency a little so it's happening a little quicker. And now I'm going to go over to pulse. And you can see now what's happening is we're just switching between the two frequencies that it was gliding up and down with. So now, just playing with these dials that we had before, the modulation of the carrier, we're almost getting like a Morse code sound. And I can increase the wave shape over here of the carrier to give us more overtones, as you can see right here. And I can increase the depth of the modulation. And for instance, I could take the carrier frequency down. And I think you're starting to see that we're getting all kinds of different sounds just from these 5 dials. And remember, all of the sound that you're hearing right now is all coming from this red carrier oscillator right here. All of the other blue dials are just modulating this carrier oscillator. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play around with these 5 dials and show you different types of sound possibilities that you can get with this. Enjoy. All right, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that little short introduction to the DWG West Coast oscillator in Reaktor Blocks. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and also leave me a comment with any ideas you have on this tutorial. In the next tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to take the same West Coast oscillator here, and we're going to add another module and increase the complexity of ideas that we can create. See you soon. Peace.